Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live. Feels like forever, and it hasn't been. We were just here, a week and a half ago, something. But the Christmas season tends to really make time stretch out. And we tend to, especially those of us who work in retail or service or just with people in general, you tend to lose track of the people that mean the most to you, and that's you guys. So I want to apologize for that, but I want to also say that 2022 has been a hell of a year. It's been a year of correction for a lot of us coming out of the pandemic. I think a lot of us tried to reconnect with what was important before the pandemic. And in many cases, we discovered that while the things might still exist, they changed fundamentally in that short 2.5 years between then and now. It's funny because I remember starting this channel, getting it rolling, figuring out what I really wanted to do with this channel. At first, I thought I was going to be much more the guy that uploaded videos, kind of explaining why movies work and what plot techniques and what really connected with people. And then for a long time, I was intoxicated by the idea of having a lot of guests on the show. Sometime in there, I was trying to, help build the community that now exists around me by bringing people together in a way that was kind of untamed and unkept. It turned out that none of those things are exactly who I am, and it's been really a lot of self-discovery. At my heart, I think I'm a guy who loves the horror genre. I'm a guy who loves my friends in it, and I'm deeply, deeply loyal. And I think that's what this really comes down to. It's not really about talking about movies and books. It's about finding those connections with those people who actually speak the same language than I do. And ironically, along the way, we found a few people who speak the same language I do, but English is the second language. So it's been a year of a lot of reflection in that. One of the things that's changed so fundamentally is how we consume movies. And there's been both good and bad in all that. The good is that a lot of the theater chains across the country are finally embracing independent and foreign cinema, and that has opened up what I can see on the big screen. I'm a guy who's always been willing to travel a little bit further to see things theatrically that a lot of people, I guess, would just wait in the past until it hit, video stores or cable. Today, streaming. I was always willing to just say, screw it, I'll drive into Manhattan to see it because I want to see that now. And there's a lot of great memories I have attached to that. Seeing Stendhal Syndrome on the big screen during its U.S. premiere in New York was a great one. Traveling to Philadelphia to see a showing of Repo, the Genetic Opera, with the cast and crew in attendance. There's been so many of those great experiences. So I've always been willing to make that extra effort to see something theatrically. It's important to me. But the theaters took a real tumble into uncertainty about their foundation, about how likely it was that they were going to survive in the pandemic world and the post-pandemic world. And they've opened up their eyes to other possibilities, that maybe everything doesn't have to be a Star Wars, a Marvel, or an Avatar to be worthy. By the same releases, by the same token, I have to say it's disheartening, because even though all those smaller films are getting out there, it's not like they're hitting every theater, and it's not like they're getting into the consciousness the way they should. Even a big crossover film like RRR only penetrated so far. There seems to be an invisible wall that exists for cinema outside, again, the big mainstream. It serves to remind us, though, I think, that I'm a person who hates the original Top Gun, and waited quite a while during the Top Gun 2's theatrical release before I actually showed up. People kept telling me, it's actually really good, and it's going to remind you of real cinema, real American cinema. And I resisted that, because in a way that I think we all are guilty of at times, you kind of vote for things to fail. And the idea of a Top Gun sequel seems to be something I should absolutely want to fail. Well, it's a great little film. It's not in my top 10 of the year, but it's a great film. And that's the beauty and the horror of where we're at with the domestic theater chains. They've opened up, and I think Top Gun taught them something, because this wasn't the Marvel thing. This wasn't the DC thing. This wasn't James Cameron putting a bunch of CGI on screen and forgetting to write a script. This was a real movie. Real mainstream movie. Very mainstream movie. But real. And satisfying. And one that entertained first and worried about messaging, I don't know, 7th or 8th down the line. So all that is positive, but the sad fact of the matter is the theaters haven't recovered what they lost by giving up on, the weekly release of the big dumb CGI action film. And that puts theaters into question. What is the long-term survivability of an industry that has taken such a hard hit? I don't have the answer to that. I've said for years that we need to embrace the idea of the theatrical experience being more than just a movie projected on a wall. I think there's a lot that they could do to really save themselves. And it's all about improving the experience. Now, don't get me wrong, like, they can't improve on sound, and there's only a little bit more further they can probably actually make the visual experience better. We've seen that 3D it's not something people in the long term really are interested in. Yes, we could have giant, basically television screens, giant 8K television screens staring back at us. That seems exhausting to me. But it might be the future. It might be that next level of excitement. But that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a level of respect for the consumer when you walk into the movie theater. That is different. Listen, there's always been posters in the lobby of the upcoming films. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about trailers for movies in front of the movie you came to watch. I think most of us like that. Though I do have an idea that perhaps there should be two types of trailers out there. There should be a trailer that doesn't spoil anything and one that perhaps does spoil things for the audience that's cool with spoilers. And maybe there's a way to have showtimes before 7 be spoiler free and after 7 to be spoiler trailers. I don't know. They're both valid marketing techniques, but it would do a little bit of service to the consumer. But the big thing I have a problem with is I hate seeing commercials projected on the screen at all. But it used to be that when they originally started seeing them, it was always before the advertised start time. And now they're bleeding over into the actual start time. Like you'll get a trailer, then a commercial, then a trailer, then a commercial, then a trailer, and then your feature. That is not cool. We're paying a premium for admittance, and it's a higher charge. It's a very inflationary admittance fee than it used to be. I grew up on $6 movie tickets for most of my youth. And I know that makes me sound really old, okay, because I am. But wow, it's a lot more to go see a movie today. And that's why the subscription services like the Regal Pass make so much sense to so many people. But is that sustainable, right? Because now I'm paying $20 or whatever it is per month. Yeah, they're getting, $140 out of me a year guaranteed or whatever. But now I'm going to use that, right? I'm going to use their services at least the amount that makes sense to buy the pass. So I'm not sure if it's sustainable really long term. And I'm not sure if the studios really care now that they have another outlet in streaming. When they can go directly to the consumer, they could argue they don't need the theaters anymore. So that's a big one. Get rid of the ads. But there's a cost associated with what I'm saying, right? You'll make the consumer happier, but you're losing the ad revenue that's coming in by doing it, which is substantial. At the end of the day, you have to decide who your customers are, right? So the reason that there have always been commercials on free television is because that's who's paying the bill. Your consumer isn't paying the bill for free television. Once cable came out, or got popular, I should say, because it was out way before it became popular, one of the big selling points was that there weren't commercials. Well, guess what? Basic cable, there's commercials all over the place, right? And that became an annoyance. So if you look at the YouTube model, for instance, if you pay for the premium service, you don't have to deal with ads, right? So there's a contract out there as unspoken between consumers and entertainment platforms that if you are paying a premium price, you shouldn't have to deal with them, whatever means they use to bring in additional funds. The theater chains haven't learned this. And every time you see a commercial for a car company or an insurance company or a soft drink that you already had the opportunity to buy in the lobby, I think it makes it that much harder for us to justify driving an extra distance to go see a movie you actually want to see in cinemas rather than the big nothing release this week from Marvel. So I think that's one thing that I've had personal trouble with reconnecting with as going to see as many movies in the past is that it's not as exciting or as fulfilling an experience as it used to be. And that's despite the fact that I travel further, so I go see films that I'm excited to see. But then I'm still hit with all the garbage. And I'm not a guy who cares what the concession prices are. Either I'm willing to pay it or I'm not. Listen, is it highway robbery to pay $8 for a bag of candy? Of course it is. But you know it when you got online. I'm not upset by that. You have a choice there, right? I can buy the candy or I cannot. And for the people who say, I want the candy, so I'll just sneak it in. Listen, you can survive for the running time of a movie without candy. I don't see that as an issue. but the movie itself is what you're paying for. And if a ticket says the movie starts at 8 p.m., then at 8 p.m. I should not be seeing something I'm not paying for. And that's the trailer. Or that's not the trailer, that's the movies. Neither of those. It's not the trailers or the movies. Can you tell it's been a long retail season? It's the commercials. So I think that's something that I'm having trouble with. And it's not new, but as I've gotten back out to see more movies in theaters this year, it's more obvious than ever. The other thing is that I'm trying to reconnect with is actually the community at large here on YouTube. And this is going to get into some potentially thorny issues. So if you've been following the world of me and my community here, my people, I'm a member of the community. It's not my community. People like Dan Shine and Jay the Stingray and Pizzal and Christian Hannah Horror. You'll notice there's been less content. Okay, we have to call that as it is. And part of that is that everyone's busy again, right? The pandemic's over. But in trying to find ways to bring people together again and to feed the beast, because we have to both enjoy each other's company and we have to be entertaining enough for someone to watch. Well, damn it, things have changed there too. I wish I didn't say this out loud. I wish I could just bottle it up, but it's tough. I'm not a really well-rounded person. I can't really hold a conversation about comedies or comic books or wrestling or hip hop. I probably could hold better on hip hop than the other subjects, but I can't have my channel be about any of those things, right? Because it's not who I am. And I'm discovering the community has kind of strayed from the areas where I can be really a big part of the conversation. And it's through no fault of anyone, except maybe myself for being as limited as I am. But I do find myself wondering where I fit into that future, During the pandemic, it seemed like we were all so desperate to just have a friend group, even if it was only on a flickering monitor or on a telephone dialed into YouTube, that we kind of we didn't mind talking about whatever. But now that I have to kind of watch how much time I spend with it, it is a little bit tougher. It's a lot tougher, actually. And Region Free being on hiatus is not the end of the world. But for me, that show was pretty important because it was a place I could go, and the subject matter would vary a little bit, but it was always pretty tightly wrapped into the genre. And I think it was comfortable for me, but it was also a place where I thought I could actually contribute something of value. In recent weeks, there's been talks of a new show starting up, a new panel show, and I'm excited about that. But I find myself a little bit worried that I'm not very valuable to the direction the show is inevitably going to go in. That I don't really have enough wide-ranging interests to really pull it off. And the last thing I want to do is disappoint you guys, but I talk about 80s action movies. I mean, I have a little bit to say, but it's not something I could do. And certainly if we're going to talk about football or, I don't have anything. I don't have anything in reserve for that. So, I mean, again, post-pandemic, trying to reconnect with what existed before, it has been a challenge, and it looking forward, I think it's going to be a challenge for me personally. I'm not going anywhere. This isn't goodbye, but it is just a real admission that I think my channel is going to be, it's going to be what it is, but my opportunities to cross over with other channels are going to be, I think, increasingly limited. And again, that's not anyone's fault but my own. Kind of where it is. And this is getting too somber, and it's supposed to be a happy time of this year, though a lot of people, including myself, don't necessarily see Christmas that way. All right, let me catch up on the chat because I haven't even looked at you over really, guys. I just had a lot rolling around in my mind, probably not in the most organized fashion, and I just want to do yeah, retail shout out. Hey, let me just spend just a second here just talking about retail at Christmas time. I've been in retail for 30 years now, just about. And most of that spent managing shops of various sizes, from shoeboxes in malls to sheds that are standalone that are really intimidating to work at. And it has never failed to amaze me that at this time of the year, when people get most desperate to complete their shopping, they tend to think of retail workers as an afterthought. I'm very fortunate. This year was a pretty good year for me. I'm in a good situation in a healthy environment, making a difference with both the people I work with and the people I work for, which is the public at large. So, I mean, I've been in pretty good spirits through this holiday. But yeah, like if you have the opportunity to say thank you to a retail worker the day after Christmas, when you're there trying to redeem a gift card, do so. Thank them. They won't remember you, but in that moment, a little bit of all the frustration and the lack of sleep and the personal sacrifices you make when 7 people call off and you need to go in, despite the fact that you had plans, all that for a moment gets mitigated just a little bit. So thank your retail workers, whether it's Mike over in the UK or if it's someone in your backyard, someone running a shoe shop in Paramus, New Jersey, whatever it is. Let's see. Yeah. Mike says, the nurses got all the attention during COVID, but no one gave a shit about us. Well, I don't think it's that they don't give a shit about us, and I don't think that we can compare ourselves with the nurses that in some cases we're keeping people alive. But yeah, I mean, retail is tough. And for those of us who've chosen it as the 9 to 5 to give us healthcare and 401k benefits, a little kindness does go a long way, doesn't it? All right, so let me see. Pope, I've not seen Skinamarink. It's on a list I have of things that I realize I'm not going to get to in the next week. So there's always at least one film that ends up should have been on my top 10 of the year list that, for whatever reason, didn't quite get there because I didn't see it. Sam says top 5 Indian releases for the year. Well, I mean, I maintain my list of top 10 lists. Decad is my favorite Indian film of the year. I really liked Blur. Millie was amazing. Dubara was great. And probably Om, which is a film I haven't really talked about, which is another Indian action film. Kind of crazy. By the end, there's a guy who takes down a helicopter with a chain. Definitely all worth your time and money. India is firing on all cylinders. At this point, I'm more excited about Indian releases than American releases easily. It's just, you can see the passion for filmmaking there. It's not just a product. It's more than that. These people love what they do. Jessica says, hello. Hello. Here's this is it right here. Jay says, I'll gladly pay more for ad free. I really believe this is it. I think the movie theaters need to reinvest in the customers rather than getting money in through the side doors. And that's going to be a hard call but I'd love to see one of the companies make a big play for it. Make it known, advertise it. You know, hey, our showings come without ads. Yes, they're $1 more, but we're not going to waste your time. We're not going to force you to watch an obnoxious Fanta commercial before your movie. Let's see what else we got. Pope Papsmear says, thoughts on the new Inland Empire restoration. I remember you saying you're not a fan of the movie. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of Inland Empire at all. I love Lynch. I think that Inland Empire was one of those experiments that only a pure artist could do. But it's also kind of proving ground that the commercial art form we call filmmaking is not well suited to that type of experimentation. If you don't know, Lynch did not write a screenplay. In some cases, he wrote pages on the day of. In other cases, he was asking for improv. Sometimes he'd just tell actors, say this, and then they'd say that. But he never plotted out the film. He also filmed it all on consumer-grade video and edited it all on consumer-grade video editing equipment. He did no professional passes on audio or color correction. It looks like somebody's home movie from about 1989, and it has about as much plot. Are there interesting moments? Sure. But for an artist like David Lynch, who's like never made a bad film before Inland Empire, even when they don't quite work, they're fascinating. Like Dune, right? His Dune is a fascinating failure. That in some ways is a great film. It's just, it does itself no service. But Inland Empire, I cannot recommend to anyone. I don't think most people will get through it. I think those who do get through it will have issues with what they just watched. I'm just not sure it matters. Not sure it matters. So yeah, I mean, I will not be buying the Criterion edition. And I do have an issue with that too. Like, Criterion used to be about important seminal films, right? And it wasn't always great films, by the way. I think that's a misunderstanding of what they do. There's a reason that they can have Michael Bay films in their catalog, and it makes sense because those films were still really wildly influential, even though they weren't necessarily good films. I don't see anything influenced by Inland Empire. And I don't think that the quality of the film justifies kind of that prestige, patina to release that Criterion is used to giving. I get that they just want to portray, they basically want the entire Lynch catalog ultimately. I get why, but this is the film that they should have just said, it's not here for this one. Let's move on. Okay, so Mike asks, do you think they would be better at cutting the exorbitant price of food and drink to stop people bringing their stuff in? So, yes, but with a big caveat, which makes it a no. Yeah, I mean, again, anything they can do to enhance the experience of going to the theaters would be great. Making it that the concession prices were a lot more in line with regular prices would really help. The problem is that on those big releases, whether you're talking about Avatar or Star Wars or Marvel, they're making, in many cases, less than 10% of the ticket on opening weekend, which is when you make the money from any movie. Because nothing has legs anymore. Avatar 2 is about to find that out. But so they need to make up that money. Otherwise, it's not a charity. They have to make the money somewhere. So they make it at the concession stand. One of the things I've always thought is that they should have a price for the individual ticket buyer, right? So, hey, okay, so your movie today is $15. Would you like to add soda and a snack for $2.50 more? I think that would be a very successful strategy, or even for $5 more, because it would still be cheaper than buying them individually. And I think everyone would probably say yes to that. And I think you should be able to kind of regulate that system in such a way that there's still a profit margin built in, even though you're taking less. The other thing they could definitely do is they could really promote that concessions are 50% off from Tuesday through Thursday. Get people, because you get people in after that opening weekend if they're willing to put it off a few days so they can have a better experience. Some would, and I think it could make some money there too. When I was young, there was date nights at the movies, whereas you get 2 tickets for the price of 1, usually on a Tuesday, and that did what it used to do very well. That doesn't exist anymore. But again, that kind of hurts the young guys that are trying to figure out how to afford this stuff. But the big caveat that makes it a no is that they need to get the studios to take less of a percentage of the tickets for the big releases. And then they could afford to bring the prices down, which would improve the customer experience and would actually get more people to regularly go to the movies, I think. That's my thoughts. I don't know. The oldest independent theater in Houston shut down. Oh, I'm sorry. That's Houston, isn't it? Now Richard Linklater bought it and will be running it. Hey, that's probably a positive, as long as he doesn't turn it into a big art house and it fail in a year. Jessica says, great Christmas sweater, Lauren. Yeah, so let me get rid of this so you guys can get a better look at my amazing. It's not merely Bride of Frankenstein, but I'm not lowering the camera any lower. There is both the Mummy and the Creature from the Black Lagoon down there somewhere too. So this is my holiday shirt. This is my holiday ugly sweater. And it represents the holiday that I actually care about. Let's see. Dave says, Merry Christmas, Lauren. New Jersey strong. New Jersey is a place where you're strong or you're dead. There's a reason there's a river on each of their side of us, right? That's where the bodies slow down that don't make it. Mike, did I step on your toes again? Shit, man. See, I had to do it. I had to do it this time, or else I wasn't going to be able to do it this week. I'm sorry. I should have given everyone more notice so you at least could have changed your time. I know you're saying you don't care, but dude, I didn't mean to step on your toes. I'm just an asshole like that. And Sam says, we all bring our own ideas to our own things to the table. Where one of us falls short, everyone else can fill in. Yeah, I get it, Sam. I really do. This is more of Lauren being an emotional bitch about things, and I'm not going to make any. I'm not going to make any excuses or any apologies for it. It is who I am. I mean, I can talk a lot of different horror culture, and that's about it. Rock and roll. I could talk some rock and roll, but not sure anyone wants me to. So, the tail end of 2021 was a unique time for us all. I'm not sure we'll ever see that. I hope we don't in many ways, but I do miss the early days of this community building, whereas people were so excited. Yeah. Jay, I'm not going to play you some freebie. You want me to play something? I'd have to move these up. I'm going to screw this up and look like an idiot, okay? I'm not going to touch the Bride of Frankenstein guitar back there. Give me a second. The amp's still warming up. The squirrel is running on the That's all I get. 1 second of white stripes. Wow. As I drop the freaking guitar. People attempting to buy a turkey on Christmas Eve. I saw you talk about people trying to to buy a turkey at Christmas Eve. It'll really depress you to know no one buys their turkey in America, because we all just save up the points on our grocery cards and we get a free turkey. We don't pay for a turkey in America. Ben says, I've seen some crazy stuff when I worked retail at Best Buy and Target. Yeah, I hear that, man. I always say when I'm writing, like, whenever I think, am I pushing this character too far? Is this unrealistic? I think back to all the crazy shit that I've seen people do, and suddenly it's like you can't make up stuff more crazier than the human race will give you for free at any retail environment. You want to see the ultimate in just what people are capable of. Don't look for science fiction or fantasy. Just go to Walmart or McDonald's. You'll be fine. Jessica says, please say thank you to all your retail workers. Do it. Wouldn't make it a day without YouTube. Well, I'm watching something every day. I watch a lot more than just the community, though, too. So I find my interests are in weird places. I watched everything from a gentleman in the UK who fixes vintage electronics, because I have a little bit of that in my life too, and I love that show. I love seeing people, especially like professional musicians, when they react to dumb pop and rock music. I love watching that. I love lost media shows, whereas they find things that are really obscure. Love true crime. And I mean, anytime that Lady White Rabbit uploads anything, I'm all over it, because she is my favorite YouTuber. It's so cool that she's a friend of the show. She is the best. If you've not subscribed to her channel, you should go there now. That channel slowed down as well. It's kind of like I was talking about before. Like, all of us were producing more when we didn't have a whole lot else going on. So, oh, well, you see, I was under the impression it was out there. But it is on my link. It is on my list. And Jess says, we need to collaborate on Ohm. Yep, I need to watch it again. And then I think I'll be in good shape. Ben says, I'm fine with ads. Lets me play on the phone longer before the trailers start. Ben, do you go to Regal at all? Because they I don't know if they're still doing it, but they were doing this thing, whereas they would put on the big screen like a video game thing that you're supposed to be able to play on your phone by holding your phone up to the screen. I never figured that out, and frankly, I was like, you're encouraging people to pull out their bright, glaring phones in the movie theater. And yeah, it's before the movie began, but you're just normalizing a certain activity that I'm not sure I'm good with. It's bringing me right back to laser pointers in 1999. With a bear. The bear's outside sleeping. Oh, with a beard. Yeah, I'm probably going to take it off soon, so it shows off all that wonderful gray. Look, we'll get in close there. You can see all the gray. Yes, yeah. That's old man's territory here. Rolling, smoking spliff, ate some Valium to take the edge off. I'm kind of high. I see a cat. Yeah, it's not hard to see a cat around this place. This is the storm. There we go. Pope says the Straight Story is still the scariest Lynch movie. In many ways, it is, because it deals with the most real subject matter. And it does so kind of point blank in your face. And that's it's not a horror film, but it deals with much of the same material as horror films, just in a very plain stated, non-coded way. And that's that whole morality and mortality thing. I agree. It's a very hard film. Okay, so Mike's trying to bait me here with this. Is Terminator better than Jason X? For most people, no. For most people, Jason X is not better than the Terminator. To follow your question exactly, for me it is. I mean, Jason X to me is a rollicking, fun time, full of great character moments and just an awesome sensibility of what a fun action horror film should be. Brave beyond belief. It's constantly trying for the fences, right? If to use a baseball thing, it's probably really screwed up that. It goes all the way, all the time, even when it doesn't have the resources to do it. The original Terminator, I think, is a good-ish film. It has plot problems, it has convenience, it has contrivance, but it's certainly better than anything that would come later in his franchise. Whereas I think Jason X is the 10th film in a series. It has no right to be anywhere near as good as it is. Jay asks, have any of you actually seen Avatar 2? I got to be careful here because I just talked about Jim Cameron twice already to talk about the Avatar 2. I'm not seeing it. I mean, I've never seen the first film. I don't think there's any chance of me seeing the second. And this goes back to the kind of Halloween Ends argument, which is like, at a certain point, I don't want to watch what I know I'm not going to enjoy. I'm only going to watch things that have a chance of entertaining me and not annoying me. Avatar 2 is going to annoy me. So why would I do that? Why? So I can go on the air and rail against it? I'm sorry. I'm not going to put up a Patreon account and, if you want to see me, spill my guts on it for an hour and a half on why I hate Avatar 2. I just don't. I'm not that guy. I don't have that kind of patience. Ben did say it, and he didn't hate it, but he did feel the length. I can't deal with that much CGI. I don't think ever again. Sam says she can't muster the interest for Avatar. It's not even on the radar. Yeah. And Jay says, I think it's interesting. I don't know many people in the community that have actually seen it. I think they're in for a rude awakening with this film. I do not think it's going to have legs. I think if you look at the original film's release, it grew for about 2 weeks, almost day to day in attendance. Whereas this is performing like a traditional release. It comes out big on its opening weekend. It stumbles pretty hard at the beginning of the week. It builds slightly back up for a second weekend, which is usually about half or less than half of the first weekend. And then it drops off the damn radar. And this thing is performing almost exactly like that. So I have a feeling this thing is not going to have legs. I think people have moved on. What was special about Avatar in its time was it was still riding off of the fumes of Titanic. It's a huge release. I know it seems crazy to say that, but it was the next James Cameron film, and Titanic had really bought a lot of goodwill with a lot of people. I'm not a fan of Titanic, but a lot of people were. So it had that. It had the 3D thing going for it, and it had the promise of next generation CGI going for it. Well, 3D isn't an issue for people anymore at all. CGI is, if anything, a deterrent for most people at this point. And then there's the fact that it's not special anymore. All those elements can be found 4 or 5 times a year from Marvel, right? We just had a slate of Star Wars films that handled the high fantasy, the high fantasy thing. You can turn on HBO and watch a Lord of the Rings friggin' television series. The world's moved on. We don't need Avatar. I think this is feeding off of the last one, but I don't think this is going to go anywhere near the $2 billion or so that James Cameron said this needs to make to break even. I think they might get $1 billion out of it, maybe, but that makes it a mediocre modern Marvel film, right? Nothing more than that. And with what these things cost, the third film is gonna come out, but I don't think it goes beyond that unless something really, really, really changes. Brian Bride of Frankenstein Day. That would be a better holiday. Although someday I'll tell you about my concept of replacing Christmas with Sleepmas. Everything can be the same except every retail worker gets to sleep for a week afterwards. Mike says that sweater makes you look like you won an award. I would remind you that I don't win awards. And Mike is saying that it's not my fault that he didn't stream tonight. He just couldn't be bothered. Pope, favorite Machine Gun Etiquette? I think is the obvious answer. I could have played the opening of Smash It Up for you, but I went with the White Stripes. Sorry. Are you growing a beard or is this one? This is about as far as I usually would ever let it go. I'm not a guy who can really grow length. This comes in fast. Growing facial hair is not a problem, but I'm not a guy who it tends to curl rather than go straight down, and I look like I don't know, like some 70s trucker movie extra, and I'm not going to have that happen. Piz, how are you, sir? Halloween ends. 4K is on its way to you, Lauren. Merry Christmas, my friend. You're welcome. In the spirit of the holiday, I will say thank you. Someone at Goodwill will really enjoy it. Visited by voices. I don't know. Do you guys like the beard? I mean, Sam's saying she likes the beard. Makes me look older. I don't care about that, but only few can pull off a beard. Yeah, I'm not one of them. Sorry, the StreamYard is a little bit sluggish tonight. I think they're talking about cookies. No, it's pudding that they're talking about. I don't see that's another subject like wrestling or reggae music that I can't talk about. Have I ever seen Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction? I've seen clips of it, and I'm almost certain that I probably saw an episode at some point back in the day. All those shows are compelling, but they all kind of get to be the same after a while. I will tell you, growing up, In Search Of was my show for that stuff because it was basically the first. They'd go out, Leonard Nimoy would talk in circles about like the Yeti or about meditation or about psychic healing, and you'd see footage from the Philippines, grainy 8mm footage of some guy in the Philippines pulling a noodle out of a guy's nose, and all that stuff was really compelling to me, and I loved it. I bought the box set. I had a bootleg of the box of every episode, but then I got the legit box when it came out. And it's funny, they don't work at all anymore, but I still love them to death. If you've never seen In Search Of, it's definitely worth searching for. Mike, I don't think I will convince you that The Terminator is a worse film than Jason X. But what I will say is that, the Terminator films are not near 10 sequels long, but we've seen the drop-off in quality with that series. Dark Fate and Genesis are abysmal films. I can only imagine where they'll be when they hit their 10th film. I understand, though, if you haven't read this information is out there. This isn't like breaking news. That apparently the future of Terminator is animated, as animated films. So that probably makes sense. That's probably a good move. What they were saying is it's the difference between DC's animated films and their live actions is kind of what they're going for. That by going animated, they can control the budget and actually kind of do more challenging stories. DJ is asking Piz if there's any his live streams tonight. Well, thanks, DJ. I can tell I'm doing a great job. Thanks. Because about Megan, like, it's an interesting projection, but the January release schedule for horror films, it's a slot where they know they can make a modest amount of money off a low budget film, and it works in many cases, but sometimes it doesn't. Separation was actually a way better film than its reputation. It got dumped into that January release spot, and it just couldn't find traction. So it's kind of hit or miss. I don't know. I'm not terribly interested in Megan because it feels like I've seen a lot of films very much like it. But Jessica saying the beard plays. Bog Zombie says, I was hooked on Unsolved Mysteries in high school. In middle school. I watched a decent amount of Unsolved Mysteries. I think that show had a weird production style, whereas like even when the actual installments, the recreations and the narrated segments weren't particularly strong, it was still very compelling because of the quietness and the kind of almost uncanny nature of like the wraparound and just this I don't know, there's a certain level of dread over that show, but a sterile dread. It's interesting. A lot of people have really great memories. Sam is saying it was Unsolved Mysteries. Sightings, then Beyond Belief for her. I'm not sure I know what Sightings is. It sounds like it's a UFO show, but Piz wants to kill the Terminators. You see, the problem I have with Terminators is that they made one film that attempted to not tell the same damn story as the first film. And that movie, the fourth film, is pretty terrible. But it had the right idea. Tell a new story. It did so much wrong. Like the wasteland, the post-human society that you saw in flashbacks in the first three films was not what they presented at all. I didn't love the transformery look of the robots of the future, whereas again, they didn't match what we saw in the previous films. And I wanted it to always be night and dreary and kind of blue on black and ugly and desperate. And they didn't do that. And I think that was a real mistake because I think that is the movie people want. Ironically, Genesis in its opening scenes actually captured that look pretty well. And I would say the opening of that film is pretty decent. It's just everything else in that film falls apart pretty bad. Though I will say that I think Dark Fate is far worse. Because Dark Fate, it's insulting to its audience. It's preachy, it's more than a little stupid, and yet it tries to be self-important, and that doesn't work. One of the reasons I like the third film more than most people in the Terminator series is because it's not heady. It's not pretending to be more than it is. It is completely just, hey, you guys want to see another Terminator movie? Let's give you another Terminator film. And frankly, things like the Elton John glasses on the Terminator is far less embarrassing to me than some of the shit in the films that you guys love in that series. Shit like, I didn't kill anyone, he'll live. That's just as bad to me. Sorry. I know you'll all disagree. I don't care, but nah. Why can't we let the Terminator be the Terminator from the first film? You could tell that the boy and his dog story of the second film just fine without that shit. That attempt at that Spielbergian Marvel, obviously before Marvel, but Marvel-y like humor to diffuse all the tension. But Sam says Separation was underrated. Yeah, so it wasn't so much underrated as no one freaking saw the thing. It looked like, I don't know, it looked like a lot of films, but when you actually saw it, you were kind of shocked by the fact that it had depth, had great characters, it had a really ambitious ending, though it doesn't quite work. I like the scale of the ambition of that movie. Mike says, did you see Violent Night? Felt like a mix of Home Alone and something a bit darker. I would have preferred a full-on violent movie. Oh, and Christmas Bloody Christmas was terrible. So I've had people tell me that Christmas Bloody Christmas is great, and some people say it's awful. I'll eventually see it, I guess. Christmas horror is really not my main thing. I like Silent Night, Deadly Night, the original, because it's so incredibly nihilist. It's dark and ugly and mean-spirited and has a nasty ending. But even the sequels to that film, it's not really my thing. Violent Night I want to see, but I feel like the film I want it to be in my head is not what I'm getting. And broken record time again. It's if it wants to be my favorite action film of the year, then it has a pretty big stumble ahead because it has a huge movie to get over. That cat. It's really hard to point. There you go. That cat. All right, guys, we've been going about an hour. I'm going to stay on for another, 20 minutes or so. And then I have to actually start moving because I have a place to go. Piz is saying that he enjoyed Violent Night, but he'll never watch it again. 3.5 out of 5. Yeah, that's kind of like my gut impulse is that's probably where the film would lie into me. So that's why I haven't exactly rushed to get there. I don't know. He and Christmas horror is Piz's thing. This is Christmas action, but I think we'd be fools not to realize that sometimes action films kind of veer pretty hard towards the horror audience. And I think that Violent Night might be a perfect example of that. I was talking to some friends, chatting with friends about the structure of action films and how Die Hard is a film that basically changed the paradigm for action films structurally, not just in popularity or ways of setting up the action, but actually in how that film is structured. Maybe someday I'll do a piece on that. I wouldn't do it live. I would definitely record it, but so you guys get the most out of it that you could. But so I like Violent Night, not horror at all, though. What I mean is, though, the kind of cutthroat, violent action films always kind of appeal to horror fans more than, say, something like Raiders of the Lost Ark is a general action film, right? Whereas something like Violent Night is tending more towards something that horror fans would enjoy. I didn't mean to insinuate that it's a horror film. Just that it kind of speaks some of the same language as horror. If you have anything else you want to throw at me tonight, then do it in the chat. Otherwise, we're probably going to start wrapping up. Kazi, can you get down? That's not safe at all. So I want everyone actually to think about in the coming weeks of we finish up this year and go to the next year. Your entertainment choices. There's a lot out there. If you search a little bit deeper, Shudder seems to be in some trouble, so let's go out there and make sure we're supporting them. If you're already subscribed to them, that's great. Just actually use the service, because believe it or not, using a service is an indication of its health. So if there's something on Shudder you haven't seen up to now, definitely give it the click. And if you aren't subscribed to it, really consider it, because it's make or break time with Shudder. Also, when you go to your theater listings, you know what? Avatar will be around. You're going to be able to see Avatar whenever the hell you want, forever. But your chance to see some of these smaller films on the big screen, well, that's not as certain. You might lose track of some of these films entirely by the time they hit the streaming services. So please, 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 please make an attempt to go see something a little bit outside the normal. Also, if you're in the mood to read something, there's a book coming out in the coming few days that might interest you. Anyway, I'm going to say good night to you, and thank you all for watching. I'm so preoccupied with my cat not falling down the stairs because she's on the banister. It is just not funny. But anyway, everyone, please have a great night. Be safe. Enjoy the rest of your year, brief though it may be.
Started babbling, speaking in tongues. The network released a press release saying he'd had a stroke. Whatever happened, he never went back to broadcasting. Instead, he disappeared from public life for 3 years. Then, in 1980, he published a book, Perihelion. Bestseller right from the word go, which, by the way, is the first word of the first chapter. Go find yourself. It didn't stay just a book for all that long. Readers became converts. They pooled their money and bought a town, Meadowlark's childhood home, Badger, Wisconsin, and renamed it Perihelion. I run a company that does impossible things. Sometimes with words and smiles, sometimes with Kevlar vests and AR-15s. It all depends on the job. For this one, the Perihelion job, we're going to need more than communication skills and good aim. We're gonna need a fucking miracle.